Buxton, but first I want to talk about Declan Goff, my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers, who, of course, before I was hit with appendicitis, helped me lose weight a much more natural, fun way, and that is through the art of weight control. So again, they're not a diet place. They are a center that can help you drop weight, keep that weight off, which is great. And you know what? It's as easy as I have ever dropped weight. Dawn joined me on the program about a month and a half back or so, and she is down 16 pounds. So together, the Zolgad household down more than 50 pounds. And you can join the program right now for 50% off. It is their anniversary sale. 855 go LIVEA or go to LIVEA livia.com. If you're in town here, you can certainly go and see their dietitians personally. If you're not, if you are a fan of the show and you are in, I don't know, Colorado, guess what? You can virtually have a visit every week, and it's that simple. Livia, LIVEA.com. So, Declan, quickly on Buxton. What
Yeah.
Baldelli said last night, I thought, and this is where I think there's push and pull between the front office and Rocco. I think Rocco often wants to say more to make clear what's going on because in Rocco's mind, and he's right about this, it sort of defends him. So, because I mean, I think you see the constant attacks. Rocco's pitching decisions stink. Rocco took Buxton out. Rocco did this. Rocco did that. And I've always said it's not all him. He's being told what to do. But he went down a path last night that is it's really sad, and I don't think it's short term. And that is the fact that Byron Buxton, if we're now dealing with a chronic hip problem, a chronic knee problem, as far as I can tell, unless it can all be surgically repaired, and I doubt that because those are usually long-term things, we are talking about a race against this contract to see how long of the 7 years you could actually get. Because there is just no way on God's green earth, if he's breaking down like this, and with what his skill set is, which is speed, great athlete, that in 5 years, it's going to be fine. So, like, that to me was pulling the fire alarm on the career of Byron Buxton.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I think Rocco is about as fed up with the team performance, with the constant questions. I get it. That's frustrating as all hell. But with Buck, they can't. I mean, I try to defend the guy left and right. He takes a lot of heat from fans for his lack of availability and durability, and I get that. I get that you want to see your star players in the field. When he is on the field, he's a difference maker. He made his first All-Star game this year. We know how good his defense is. He has great pop. He's actually starting to draw a little bit more walks this year than previously. At least it's some type of step in the right direction. But it's not a good idea when Rocco Baldelli, not a good idea, excuse me, I shouldn't say that. It's not a good sign when Rocco Baldelli basically admits like, oh, he's been dealing with this all year. Oh, he's been dealing with this all year. It's like,
Right.
when does it end? When does it end if you're a Twins fan? Because you don't know if Carlos Correa is going to be coming back. If you're only guaranteed 110 games with Byron Buxton, which I think when we signed the contract, we all thought, okay, I guess that's probably worth 0 games of Byron Buxton in a Twins uniform. But at the end of the day, paying a guy up what he's being paid to only being out there for 110, 120 games a year is not ideal either.
No, and he cannot. His style of play is his style of play too. So I've always gone back to, yes, he can crash into the fence less often. Like, there are things he can be smarter about. But if you now say, well, he really can't dive, okay, that's a huge part of his game. He's got a chronic hip problem, and hip problems are not, like, you don't just resolve those. Hip problems are, think Bo Jackson. His career ended. We're now talking about being in the territory of what brings your career to an end. And when you're an athlete like Buxton, this when Baldelli said as much as he said, and he very clearly said that he's not sure if they can reveal more, which means he wants to. Like he put that out there on purpose. He basically said there's way more here than what we've talked about publicly. And he said, I don't know, something along the lines of, I don't know if this is the time to talk about it or if I can. But we are now on very murky ground of exactly how long and how effective this guy can be. And my fear is this: if it's truly chronic, and you shut him down. So if you come back today and say, you know what, it's done again. He's done for 2022. Don't think he comes back fully healthy in 23. Like, that's not how this works. Not when you're dealing with hip problems, not when you're dealing with chronic problems across the board. So if you go up and if you go in and clean up that knee and get that fixed, okay. But if it's a hip, you don't just get that fixed. That's a management problem for a long time. So I found those comments to be intriguing. The last point off the Twins, and I pointed this out on Twitter last night after consuming just an offensive. The bats are just a dud, just a complete dud. The pitchers actually doing their job now, and the bats are just terrible. You know what this has become, and I made this very clear. I think from day one of this season, which, by the way, a lot of it's been spent in first place. I said this to you guys probably 2 months ago, which is from day one of this season, it has occurred to me that the management of this team, from Falvey, Levine to Rocco, is hard to embrace. And I said, I like the players, but I don't think the fans like the people that run this team. And I feel like in some ways the players are now being swallowed up by the feeling that the fan base had towards Rocco, Falvey, Levine.
Yeah.
This seems like, and it's the word I used on Twitter, a joyless exercise. Like, for a team that's it really reminds me, Dex, of the Wild teams that we grew to absolutely despise, despite the fact they might make the playoffs. This just seems so damn joyless that it is incredible that a team can contend and you still really deep down just don't like them that much.
So I'll push back on you a little bit. I don't see the same thing with those Wild teams. And I know you prefaced it that it's not the players on this Twins team that you didn't like. 'Cause those Wild teams, players wise, that was a hard group to like. As much as people liked the Coyle and the Ninos and the Granlunds and Zuckers, Parise and Suter set a tone that was kind of blah. Miko, was an up and down captain, however you want to view it.
Sure.
But the management of that team, I don't think fans had much of a problem with Boudreaux, and they probably had more of a bone to pick with Fletcher. I could hear that argument, but the management of the team wasn't the issue. It was the core of that group that you just knew, like, this is sour grapes. It's not going to work. It's contagiously bad now. It's trickling down. I don't sense that this Twins team is unlikable from a player's side, and I know that's not the point you're making. I do agree to a little bit that their management from Rocco and Falvey is unlikable. It's become to a point where sabermetrics has ruined everything for them. I mean, the entire idea of we have things set an example before, or we have things set in stone before the game begins by 2-3 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game is asinine to me. It's absolutely crazy. And I think I have more of a bone to pick sometimes with the diehards and sometimes even people that cover the team that act like we are watching one of the greatest baseball teams. That's my issue, is that this team deserves to be ripped. I mean, they've been an under 500 team now for 77 games. They went 5-5 in their last 10. I believe 8-6 over this homestand against very mediocre, and that's putting it pretty generously, teams. That's my bone to pick. The entire aura around the coverage and just some of the diehards, I think that's my issue. And by the way, I'm a diehard fan myself. I love the Twins. I have season tickets. I want to see this team be successful. I don't think it's as unlikable as how those Wild teams got towards the end of the Parise, Suter, and those kids era.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there is something about the coverage and just the way it's presented to us sometimes with fans and everyone else that it just seems like, hey, like, why don't you just enjoy it? It's like, no, I don't want to enjoy it. I want to see this team be successful.
Yeah, and I think the problem is this: if you ever start to go down a path where a supposedly competitive team is a joyless exercise, it gets swallowed up. So, like in the Wild's case, it was the players, but then you eventually turned a little bit more on the coach because it was clear that players were telling the coach exactly what they were going to do, and so it got worse for the coach. Prime example, Mike Yeo. Like with Mike Yeo, it got to be so. It always engulfs things. Yeah, so it engulfs things. So I don't think the people have been on board, and they might be right, in this town with Falvey and Rocco from day one of this season. Okay, so and I said 2 months back, I think the players. I still like the players, but now I feel like it's just all becoming one. It's just all becoming one because here's part of the problem with joyless teams. They are truly inside joyless. And I think that's the problem. I think when the pitchers know that they're going to be given no chance to compete, Sonny Gray knows now what is going on, okay? So when Sonny Gray goes out there and he knows I can throw one of the best damn games, like craftiest games of my life, right? Like I might not have my best stuff. I'm going to give up hits. I might give up a few runs, but I'm going to be done after 80 pitches. Take your pick of pitches. He becomes joyless because he's not having fun. There is a reason why Joe Schmidt asked Gray what was considered an innocuous question, and Gray basically spilled his guts. And that's because he's not happy. And when players aren't happy, and when both sides, Rocco, now, not happy. Don't blame him, but he's not. But that's where this has become, this should have been fun. This was a last place team, and they rebounded, and they've, they're in a bad division, but they've been competitive. And it's been, to me, no fun, and it's getting to be less fun. And I think one of the reasons why this team, like the Texas series to me, was just from the 3 games I saw, it was just guys going out there and trying to grind through it. There was no, on Bally's last night, they're like, well, maybe they can go down to Houston and get a kick down. Well, yeah, they're going to get their ass kicked, or they should. There's not, the intensity is gone because I think that the passion to play a game in which, to your point, it's being run by decisions that are probably often not common sense. So I just think it's very interesting to see. I think the way I would put this is this season is just sort of crumbling, and it's ugly to watch, and it's too bad because it didn't need to be like this. But unfortunately, when you have a faction of your team that's, hard to embrace or understand, it eventually breaks down. The Wild had the same thing. The Twins do now. The Vikings have had this exact thing before too. Some of those Kirk teams should have made the playoffs, but they were joyless exercises. Speaking of the Vikings, you've got, because it's Tuesday, Pecking Order Tuesday. Declan Goff is going to bring us one. But before he does, it's brought to you by my friends at Spiral Light Candles. Spiral Light Candles, you know what? This Viking season hopefully won't be joyless, but you know what it will be? It will be stressful because football Sundays are always stressful. And that's where Spiral Light Candles comes in. Now, first of all, they're a great gift. They're a great gift for your mom, grandma, wife, girlfriend, or yourself. They smell fantastic. The scent is great. But when it comes to the Vikings, what I have here is I have holding in front of me Judd's Purple Positivity Candle, which you can order right now. Now, I'm going to show you this thing. It burns from here down, so spiral light, you get it, huh? And then it's got a wick down here that burns long lasting. So as you are watching the Vikings game and maybe drinking a few Surleys and using a few curse words, you know what's going to calm you down right nearby? That is your Judd's Purple Positivity Spiral Light Candle. How do you get it? SpiralLightCandles.com. SpiralLightCandles.com, and they'll be at the State Fair as well, so check them out there. All right, what's
NFL
your
bets? That's what I was trying to
no problem at all. No problem at all. Go ahead.
Right, Judd. So this is my pecking order. I don't know if you were aware of this because this is what I was going to do with Phil. And with us just literally doing a 6-man tornado tag team of coverage over these next few days, I present you a pecking order of the top 5 Viking seasons I was most excited for.
Okay, cool.
So you're going to see a theme in this list. And spoiler alert, 4 of these 5 seasons, the Vikings failed to make the playoffs. But
sure.
I think you'll be maybe potentially surprised at number 1. And this is just more of when this is a timeline of the last 12 years. So, I became a Vikings fan in 2001, but I was 8. Okay, I was 8 years old. And even, I remember when Childress was hired. I remember most consciously, I remember Viking seasons from 2002 on. But I'm also not going to pretend like I was 11, 12 years old and I knew what I was getting myself into. So I basically took from the time I was 17, 16, when I was an actual high school kid, who had a little bit more conscious, not a lot, but a little bit more consciousness of what was going on and coverage of the team. So that's where the basis of this comes from. So these are my 5 Viking seasons that I was most excited to watch going in as a football fan. Nice. I will start with number 5 and then work my way to the top. Okay. Number 5, Judd, is one of the most recent ones on this list. It is 2018. I had the 2018 Vikings as the fifth one on my list. And now I have only as fifth because I believe this is right around the time I actually came back to Score North, and this is right after obviously Kirk Cousins has signed. The Vikings are going to be year one with Kirk. They're coming off a 13-3 season. Even I knew when you go 13-3 in the NFL, regression's going to come. And let's be honest, the 2017 Vikings were the biggest overachievers in the world when it came to just at least regular season success. For God's sakes, they won 13 games with a backup quarterback. So
Right.
even with Kirk coming in and the defense still being good, even I knew, hey, 10-6 and 11-5 is still good enough to be in the playoffs and probably win the North, but that's a regression, right? That's still a step down, quote unquote, from 13-3. I was excited for that. We were all excited for Kirk to get here. The defense was still very damn good. And I was excited to see what Kirk Cousins could do, but the 2018 Vikings end up falling on their face, losing one of the most embarrassing games I've ever witnessed in the world when they lost to the Bears to close that season. But the 2018 Vikings are number 5 on my list, Judd.
Yes. In fact, I think that's fair because of what you said about the 13-3 campaign in 17. But yeah, there's no question. I mean, we all thought that the Vikings had found their QB. And look, I will never. The thing about signing Kirk was I don't criticize it because one, I had no expectation that Case was going to come back and play well. That was not, to me, that was a 1-year thing. And two, Kirk appeared to be the long-term guy. And so, yes, I think it's very fair to have 18 as at least a part of that list because that was coming back still a damn good team. I mean, regression was going to come, but you know what? You could have made a playoff run.
Yeah.
Like you probably weren't going to win 13 games again, but I could have seen 11 wins and a playoff run for sure.
Exactly.
So, yes. I'm with you.
So my next two on this list are actually back-to-back seasons that happened. And you actually might be kind of surprised about number 4 on this list, but I will explain why.
All right.
Number 4 on my list was the 2011 Vikings. So if you remember, obviously the 2010 team was coming off the Brett Favre hangover. But young impressionable Declan was very excited that even though they reached for a first-round quarterback, hey, what's Christian Ponder going to do? Also, young Declan was very excited that at the last second they acquired Donovan McNabb, one of his favorite quarterbacks from his youth.
Oh, God. Was
and then cooked. I was just sipping some Kool-Aid, some last-minute Kool-Aid. And remember, that was the lockout year, so there was there was an abbreviated training camp. So that McNabb excitement kind of sent a little jolt into me, even though he was coming off this weird year with Washington after a successful tenure with Philadelphia for such a long time. I was about to start college. And I was convinced that, hey, because they got McNabb, this team actually is going to pop right back up. Even after going 3-13, they're going to be just fine with the veteran quarterback, and they have a rookie sitting behind them. This is an ideal situation for the Vikings. And boy, oh boy, was I dead wrong. They won 3 GD games that season.
Yeah, I think you should have paid far more attention to the Star Tribune coverage of that team. That team had no chance. Like, I didn't think the Ponder pick was terrible. I was obviously wrong. But, I said, because there were a lot of people like Dilfer who bashed it, and I said, let's wait and see on Ponder. But it was interesting because I remember being at the owners' meetings in New Orleans that March, and it was very clear in talking to Les that there was a fracture, and that's a year that they actually went 50-50. Les and Spielman, because that was the year before Rick became GM. And so both of them had a 50% say in roster, which is not a good idea. And Les wanted a veteran QB, and Rick wanted to draft one. Well, guess what? Both were wrong. Why I knew McNabb was going to be a train wreck was we had seen him, if you recall, in 2010, the Vikings actually won a game with Frazier having replaced Chili in Washington. Yeah. And McNabb was awful. He was out of shape. He was throwing short. He was terrible. And so, yes, if a young Declan had read Judd Zolgad's coverage in the Star Tribune, you would not have been... Your 2018 assumption, I love. Your 2011 assumption, you should have checked with an adult before you got excited because that team was not worth coming off. Also, 2010, I mean, that thing fell apart. 2011 11 was going to be a non-starter.
So that's funny because the number 3 on the third on this list for the pecking order was going into the 2010 Vikings season because you're coming off 2009 with Brett Favre.
That makes sense.
And you're running it back.
Yeah.
And even though Favre, kind of dink and ducked his chances of coming back, that again, core of the roster coming back, same team. They were a play away from being in the GD Super Bowl. I'm about to start senior year of high school. I really thought, oh, this will be just fine. Will they go 12-4 again? Maybe not, but they'll be just fine. Brett Favre's coming back off the best year of his career, Magic Carpet Ride. I'm still young and impressionable. And I believe you and Brian Murphy, Chip Scoggins, all of you kind of got together for a beer and said, this has the chance to be something special again, or it has chances to be one of the biggest train wrecks of all time. And boy, I think train wreck was putting it lightly for the 2010 Vikings, who had a roof collapse, a quarterback who was basically concussed on the field, a snowmageddon game in Philadelphia. Check off anything you want on a bingo card. It happened to the 2010 Vikings, but it was still a very exciting time, and I thought the Vikings were going to be right back in the NFC Championship game.
It was me and Murphy in a bar in San Francisco the eve before the Vikings played a preseason game against the Niners at the old Candlestick Park, drinking an Anchor Steam. And we both said this could be one of the great comeback and blah, 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 or this could be a disaster. And it was the latter. So this one makes perfect sense. I don't think truthfully, anybody thought that team was going to be bad, much less just a complete dumpster fire. Yes, things went wrong. But, there were signs from the beginning that it was off the tracks. The fact that, Sidney Rice had come out of the Saints NFC Championship game injured and been told, have surgery. And he said, oh, I will if you give me a contract. And the Vikings were like, oh, no. And he said, okay, I'm not. And then he shows up on the PUP list. And then the fact that it was very clear that Brett Favre was never exactly told how bad Rice was hurt, but Brett came back. So, and Brett had to be literally, it turned out, dragged back. Like, that was real. That was not the 2009 thing I've always contended was a dog and pony show. I don't want to go to training camp. Okay, here's how you won't go to training camp. That was very orchestrated in a way. This one was real. And so, yeah, but to have it flame out like it did and to have it be a complete unmitigated disaster was shocking. And that was, I think you would find any Vikings fan who was around at that time would 100% say their expectation was we are going to make a run again. And this time, damn it, we're going to get to the Super Bowl. And it didn't work out.
All right, 2 more to go on this list, but before I get there, I want to shout out my friends at Underdog Fantasy, the best and easiest way to play fantasy sports. We're working on some fun things behind the scenes, some fantasy football drafts with you, our Score North listeners, coming up this season. Been talking to my friends at Underdog how to make that happen, so that'll be exciting. If you want to get in on some fantasy football with us, you can join Underdog Fantasy. Download it on the App Store or on the Google Play Store. If you register and deposit money, they will match your first deposit up to $100. They have some great pick'em options. They have great fantasy football options. Plenty of great plethora of sports to get in on and get a sweat on at UnderdogFantasy.com. The best and easiest way to play fantasy sports. Go join Underdog Fantasy. Promo code SCORE, SKOR. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. Underdog Fantasy. Shout out to them for helping power Mackey and Judd and Score North programming. All right, Judd, I'm going to jump forward a little bit here. After going from 2018, 2011, 2010 Vikings, I'm going to jump forward to the 2016 Vikings. So I understand that about a week before the season, Teddy Bridgewater's knee exploded, and then it caused uncertainty, and they traded for Sam Bradford. But let's pause up to the exact moment that Teddy's knee exploded in training camp. That team was 11-5. That team should have won their wild card game, if not for one of the most epic shanks of all time. Again, returning the core of their roster, a franchise quarterback who was a solid game manager and a coach that embraced him. A quarterback that a lot of fans, I think, wanted to embrace and really was easy to root for, too, by the way. I thought the 2016 Vikings was going to be it, man. And look, there's a lot of over-exaggerations, I think, that sometimes happen at training camp. Teddy looked so damn good in that training camp. You kind of thought that there was even now a next level to his game, not just being a dink and dunk game manager, starting to air it out a little bit more, starting to open things up a little bit more. And I thought that 2016 Vikings team was going to be dang special. That was also my first year out of college, so I started to cover some things for that Vikings team. And I was looking around thinking this is going to be something very special. And even without Teddy, that team started 5-0 before having to start everyone in the world on their offensive line, and they absolutely collapsed and missed the playoffs. But the 2016 Vikings does deserve a spot on this list.
Yes. In fact, my pre-leg snapping thought on that is I always go back to the first Vikings game, not official, ever played at US Bank Stadium was a Sunday afternoon dress rehearsal till preseason game against the then San Diego Chargers. And Teddy looked spectacular. I remember he threw a touchdown to Rudolph, I want to say. He looked great. And that was right before he fell down, unfortunately, and his leg went. But that game, I think everyone came away. It was a traditional Sunday afternoon game. Everyone came away saying, wow, this guy looks like he has taken a step. And so, yes, right before, once he got hurt, I thought, oh boy, it's right. Vikings. Here we go. But before he got hurt, I'm with you. There was excitement there. And little did we know, and this became, in retrospect, incredibly important, that was the only quarterback Mike ever really liked. And so that was his guy. And he was building and had built to a certain point a defense, Declan, at that time that was fantastic. So, and in 2016, I feel like you could get away more so with saying, I'm building a defense and my offense is going to be sufficient. Like now it feels like now you got to have a at the very least a good, consistently productive offense. But at that point, you know, the sort of I'm a defensive guy still worked. So yeah, that whole thing, one of the great what ifs is going to always be, what if Teddy's leg hadn't gone at that practice? What would that 2016 team have done with him? And more importantly, a team that had remained on the same page. Because if you recall, the first downfall of 16 was 5-0. I think it was a bye week. I believe that they beat Houston here, had a bye week, came back and played the Eagles in Philly, and that's the game where Zim got up to the podium, and this is a huge deal, and called the offensive line, if I'm not mistaken, the word was soft, which is the worst word that you could possibly use, and everything from there began to disintegrate.
Yeah, pretty rough.
So you're
pretty rough go.
You're exactly right.
All right, man. The number one season on this list, the most excited I've ever been for a Viking season. I think this might shock you. The 2022 Vikings. This is the most excited I have been for an off season and going into a season, I think, in my entire lifetime.
Okay, you tell me why, and Sports Dad will slow you down. Okay. See, I don't want you to make the mistake of 2011.
Well, I'll say that in 2022 now, the Vikings have a young, exciting, offensive, embracive coach who's going to embrace offense. They have a team that is still pretty good and competitive. They have a chance in the NFC to, I think, still get near the top. It's not strangle-held by anyone in the NFC. It's kind of wide open at this point. I think Ed Donatel retooling this defense and getting Zadarius Smith here is big. And I think the rookie class, we talked about this on Purple Daily yesterday with Phil while you were out, Judd. Even though there aren't maybe immediate starters in this rookie class, you can go up and down outside of Ed Ingram, by the way. I should put some respect in the name. Ed Ingram's probably going to be a week one starter. You can look up and down those first 4 or 5 picks from this draft class and say, these guys actually might contribute to the roster right away. These won't just be practice squad guys. These won't just be inactive guys. These are guys that could contribute to the 2022 Vikings. I look at the schedule. I look at the state of the NFC North. I look for a coach who's very exciting and young and is finally going to turn this offense around into being the top 5 offense it should be. This is the most excited I have been for a Viking season in my lifetime.
All right. I am ecstatic today that I limped back here. Appendix gone. Still some pain. Thank God for extra strength Tylenol.
That helps.
I'm ecstatic Sports Dad came back to slow your roll, son, a little bit. Because look, I am eager as well. I am eager as well to see how this looks. And I am excited to see an offense that I think is going to function with a component who is one of, if not the best, he's one of, in Justin Jefferson, best receivers in the game. But that being said, there are too many unknowns and variables here for me to be anything but also curious. Kevin O'Connell, we have no idea if he can coach. We have no clue how this is going to work. Now, do I think he's got a chance? Absolutely he does. Absolutely. Kwesi, we have no clue. This guy is coming in very much as he is coming in from a job that was at very best equivalent to Derek Falvey. He is also going to base a lot of his beliefs on the same things. Beware of the unknown is not, and I'm not saying Rick should have stayed. He deserved to be fired, but I'm just saying I would caution you to be very curious and eager to see how this team looks. But as far as like expectations, like I'm excited because expectations, I would be incredibly cautious. And this also comes down to some very important things. Kirk Cousins. You are literally trying to change a man in his mid-30s, his thinking. That's a stretch. If they can do it, awesome. But, I mean, O'Connell's worked with Kirk before, and O'Connell thinks he's going to be the first person ever to really change Kirk into being the quarterback he wants. The defense, I like what they're doing, but you've got a guy in Hunter who has played in 6 games in the last 2 years or 5+ games. In Zadarius Smith, who had a bad back, which scares me. So I would remove that from my list. I would put it in a little box of, hey, I wonder. And if it looks good, like it might be disappointing, but if it looks good, next year, I'd be really excited about it. But I just think that there's a lot of things here. There's a lot of people who are very new at what they're doing, who we are putting faith in. And I can point you, I'm pointing towards Target Field right now. That's the cautionary tale. Sometimes you get a nice little spark too. But I think we all would say right now, we are very disappointed in the Twins from how they're being run. And that's where this is going to just flat out take some time. But I would not say that you shouldn't be excited to see it, because it could be great. I just wouldn't say it's a season where I'm like, I think that there's a chance here. The conference is still going to be strong enough that the Vikings, I don't think there's any guarantees here. They could sneak into the playoffs, but just slow your roll, Sports Sun. Just slow it a little bit.
I don't know.
I mean, you put it number 1. If you'd put it number 5, I'd be okay with that.
All those teams that I've listed did not make the playoffs. So the 2022 Vikings can still not make the playoffs, and that list is still valid. All 4 of the first 4 on that list, none of those teams made the playoffs for the Vikings. Sean McVay took over a Rams team with a failed first-round pick, turned it into the number 1 offense his first season. So I think that the way that this is tracking, this is going to be an exciting time. I think this is going to be a very exciting time to be a Vikings fan.
But you're assuming O'Connell is going to beat McVay, which if he doesn't have the right
expectations.
Yeah. And look, like there are degrees to how KOC can do here that aren't busts, but prime example. Now Kirk Cousins is better than what this guy got, okay? But Exhibit A, Zach Taylor, same exact type of background, I think, as KOC. Worked for McVay, I believe, with the Rams. And you know what? Got there, and they weren't good.
Nope.
And guess what they had to find? A quarterback. And that's my biggest question here, too. That's my biggest thing. That's what I want to see. I really think if we are to see a Lombardi Trophy going down I-94 closed one day because we got a bunch of guys in convertibles. I really think the biggest thing and my biggest question about this entire staff is, can you find the quarterback?
Yep.
Because I'm just convinced Kirk is not. That doesn't mean they can't make the playoffs, and that doesn't mean that they can't be a fun team. But I really think if Kevin O'Connell is going to achieve maximum success, my question is, can he find the quarterback who's going to do what he wants, because that's how he thinks. It concerns me that O'Connell is trying to rewire Kirk. Like, that's a very tough thing. I think if Kevin is as good as we think he could be, which we still don't know, but if he gets to be that guy and you can get him the quarterback who says, this is what I'm thinking, Kevin, and Kevin's like, damn, that's what I'm thinking as well. I think that's where you get a marriage that gets you potentially a Super Bowl championship before we die, or before I get some type of weird appendicitis attack. And it clearly won't be that because that's gone now back. So,
all right. Well, that's my pecking
Good show.
order of the Vikings season: 2018, 2011, 2010, 2016, 2022 Vikings. Judd disagrees, but we'll
no,
all
I
get
don't
in our
disagree.
face
I'm
here.
cautioning you. I think 2022 is very dangerous. 2018, I get you.
Yeah.
2022, I'm just saying, have fun with it.
I am gonna have fun with it.
Just
I'm
have fun with
embracing
it. Don't
I am.
expect it. Don't expect a ton here.
Don't
We
listen
have
to Sports
no
Dad.
idea.
Don't listen to Sports Dad. He's
have
all
no
hopped
idea.
up on paid. He's up on paid meds. He doesn't know what he's talking about. All right,
Tylenol.
hit the subscribe button for daily Minnesota sports entertainment. Shout out to Federated Insurance too for powering this episode of Mackey and Judd. Find out the industries that Federated protects at federatedinsurance.com. Head on over to Purple Daily too. We'll have plenty more to talk about. Nick Mullins coming over here. Training camp still wrapped up. Another preseason game to still talk about. So there's plenty of things on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button for daily Minnesota sports entertainment.